Assalamu alaikum, everybody.
Hello, everyone. I think today we're talking about the stories that only humans can tell, and I think that AI introduction is a perfect intro. I did not understand a thing that it said, and I think that maybe in the future AI is going to, take us forward. But up until now, our role as storytellers is really important. So, shall I introduce myself first? My name is Nyal Mueenuddin. I am an American Pakistani filmmaker, documentary filmmaker. I grew up here in Pakistan in the south of Punjab, actually, and I was born in New York and then grew up in South Punjab and spent much of my life going back and forth between these two cultures and languages, and so that has really formed my kind of the core of my identity, being from these two worlds. And after I graduated university in the United States, I moved back to Pakistan and kind of fell in love with this country again by traveling through to the mountains and into the deserts. I began working with WWF and doing wildlife work, and through that journey of traveling through landscapes and different ecosystems and meeting all of these different people, I started to build a feeling that I wanted to spend my life telling stories, stories about our humanity, stories about our planet, stories about the incredible nature that we're surrounded by and the ecological problems that we're faced with in this new world. And this has taken me on many adventures, and those adventures are really the core of my reason for being on this planet. And so as we move into this new era of artificial intelligence and robots and our lives being kind of consumed by technology and screens and information that we don't know the source of, I think it's really important to kind of reflect on where we are as humans, where we are going, where we want to go, where we come from. And so this is really an amazing opportunity to be here in Lahore at SOT with all of you, and to be discussing these topics, to be listening to other speakers, and kind of coming together as humans as we are confronted with this new world that we're quickly moving into. And so I'm really looking forward to speaking with all of you, and we're going to do a little bit of we're going to go through some questions, but then we're going to open it up to all of you, and hopefully we'll keep this kind of dynamic and explore what it means to tell stories as humans. Thank you.
So Nyal and I are friends, so this is going to be a very easy and comfortable conversation. So I'm really happy to have this chat with you.
Yeah, me too.
Can everybody hear me? Is it clear? There's not too much reverb? Okay.
Hello.
Nice to see you all. Really happy to be here. My name is Anya Raza. I am from Islamabad, but I live in Lahore now. I married a Lahori, so that's very exciting. This is a really exciting topic, and I'm very excited to jump into this with all of you. It's a fireside chat, so it's a two-way between us, but also with the audience. I am Dutch and Pakistani. My mom is Dutch, my father's Pakistani. I grew up in Islamabad. And I think I started telling stories when I would find myself in the middle of conversations between the two of them, and they would not be on the same page. And I would find myself trying to bridge their gap, trying to figure out what they were not understanding from each other and be the middleman. And it helped me understand that many misunderstandings come just from a very simple place. And I found myself in multiple places like this across my life as someone who is biracial, as someone who is white passing, as someone who almost like a chameleon can put herself in many situations. And it's been pretty exciting for me to kind of build on that skill set as I've stepped into using the idea of clearing up misunderstandings or expanding shared spaces between people. In school, identity was a big issue for me. I didn't really know. People said, oh, ye gori hai, isko kuch nahi pata, ye Pakistani to nahi ho sakti. And I'd be like, oh shit, I guess I am, sorry. But that was how I felt. And over time, I realized part of having your identity is that everybody has a different identity. It doesn't matter. You could be Sindhi, you could be Pathan, you could still have something and people wouldn't consider you Pakistani enough. So it was something that was another way of what was the story that I was telling myself. I studied economics because it was the topic that my parents thought was the right thing to study. It was a responsible topic. And when I was studying economics, I started understanding data. What is data? What is statistics? What's econometrics? How are we getting these pieces of information? How are we standardizing these pieces of information? And I realized it's completely flawed. So any numbers that you see, you need to understand who is creating these numbers, who's asking those questions, how are they being put together, and what biases exist. And so as I started seeing what is considered fact and by whom, it made me question a lot more about how we were presenting ourselves in the world. Eventually, from studying economics, I went into human development, and much of my work was in Pakistan, but in other places around the world where I had the opportunity to go to the most rural places and in moments of disaster or emergency, try and find out what the people on the ground really needed and what their stories were. And so I had to transform statistics into three-dimensional figures just so that donors would say, hey, there's some humanity here, perhaps we should send some money over. Perhaps we should help people in this situation. And it's a very tricky thing to try and bring humanity to something where we're talking about money. So this was, again, something that I found myself at a bit of a moral crossroads. Eventually, I stepped into the United Nations and similarly was using my storytelling skill set to talk about resources and how the UN was spending their resources and where. Again, extremely complicated situations where you're surrounded by leaders of countries and you have to bring humanity into conversations where there's a lot more politics and behind the scenes things that play much more than humanity does. I stepped away because I realized my voice was louder than any single organization and I didn't want to contain it anymore. I didn't want to contain my power, so I stepped into writing and advocacy and filmmaking. But mostly I stepped into being human and no longer wanting to be labeled as one thing or the other. And so I stand here, or I sit here in front of you, complete human blood in my veins, no robot inside me. I have a bit of a cold, and I've only had breakfast, I haven't had lunch, so there's complete humanity in me here. And I think that that's what's exciting about this conversation, that I'm as human as all of you, and I'm very proud to be so, and very excited to talk about how we can enhance our humanity here together using the power of AI. So thank you.
So we have a couple questions which we have been asked by the moderators, and we're going to kind of bounce back and forth, Anya and I, and interview one another. So we're going to moderate one another. Yeah. So one of the first questions, which I think is really interesting, is what emotional truths can human storytelling convey that AI will never be able to? And I don't know if you wanna start?
I can jump in.
Yeah.
What emotional truths can only humans tell that AI can't? I think to dive into that, first we need to understand what is AI and where is AI generating its information from. And I think let's talk about the context of Pakistanis using AI, for example. AI is based on an existing pool of information that has been decided by a particular number of people from a very particular mindset. AI has language boundaries. AI has limitations, multiple limitations that kind of pigeonhole us into seeing things from a certain perspective. These are perspectives that are partially unjust, definitely impartial, and wholly unrepresentative of the world that we live in today. So the information that AI is based on does not factor in many truths. For instance, I came back from Tatta yesterday, and let's say you would ask ChatGPT, hey, tell me about some folk stories from Tatta, right? Do you think ChatGPT would be able to tell me anything? And why? ChatGPT, or let's say most AI models, are based on English and Western perspectives. It will take a really long time before we're able to stretch that into even representing Urdu stories. We have a lot of oral traditions in Pakistan or in the subcontinent, so how are we going to include those stories and those truths and that history in there? In addition, how would we have tribal stories? How would we have Sindhi dialects, which will vary from depending where you are? You know, how do we incorporate these things? So I am not in the least worried that AI will take over, because AI is a fraction of the beauty that we have in the world. My fear actually lies in the fact that people don't realize the limitations of AI and what it represents. So when I think of these things, I really want to remind people that the data set is incomplete and it doesn't represent you. And particularly us here in the subcontinent, it doesn't represent us.
Yeah. Anya and I don't fundamentally agree on this point, because I think that AI poses a very, very serious threat to our humanity. I mean, I'm sure we agree on that, but to expand again on what this thing is that we're faced with. I'm not an AI expert at all, but what I understand is that these are huge databases, huge data centers that basically have been trained on all of the existing material that humanity has recorded up until now. All of the text on the internet, all of the oral testimonies, all of the photographs ever taken, the videos, the films, all of this has been learned in a very, very, very short time by these models. And so these models have been trained on the story of humanity, the story that from the Iliad and the Odyssey, from there all the way through, it has read all of that and now can formulate and understand the human storytelling perspective so well that it can predict and copy our styles and kind of feed us back what we have already created, in order to. And in some ways, I feel like this AI, when you're speaking to it and you're saying, "Wow, this AI is it understands me. It feels what I'm feeling. It's compassionate. It's empathetic." fundamentally believe that that is an illusion. It's a lie, because it is a language model that is predicting the next word and in some ways giving us what we want to hear. And I think that as humans, you know, if we look at our own lives, you know, when I'm out in nature or when I'm having a moment to myself away from everything, I sometimes return to this realization that of what a miracle we're living, to be alive, to be breathing, to be thinking on this spinning, floating rock in the middle of the universe, and the fact that we can express these things and feel these things and have experiences over our lives that, you know, elevate us to feel like nothing could be greater, and then, you know, months later hit us in the gut so hard that we feel like we're dying from our feelings. These are the things that I believe really make us human. And people everywhere experience those things. That's what binds us all together. You know, it's our curiosity for the world, our feelings, our emotions. You know, the question is, can AI, you know, what emotional truths can AI never, you know, understand? And I think those feelings, that's what separates us. It's the feelings, it's the emotions, and that, I believe, is at the core of our humanity. It's what pushes us forward through every single day. It's, you know, our love for our families, our love for our friends, our desires, you know, to see something new, to grow, to be better, to, you know, our fears of being trapped or caged, or, you know, our fear of not growing. All of these things, I believe, are what propel us as individuals and also as humanity forward, from the dawn of time. I think that that's what continually pushes us. And what we have done, storytelling, is taking those feelings and trying to convey them to one another. I mean, until 5 years ago, it's just been us, right? Now we have this new kind of semi-sentient machine that's watching us. But I just mean to say that, you know, AI can predict and try to simulate words that make itself sound like us, so we relate to it, so it's helpful, so it, you know. But I think that it's just so important that we try to stay grounded and remember that what defines us as humans are those feelings, and we have to, especially as AI continues to engulf our lives, to continue to take time to feel, you know, and to think, and to listen to other people. And that's what's going to give us our independence from this new machine world.
I think that's a really good point, because independence from this machine, it's very important as we consider, as we step into what people are calling the AI world. I disagree, but I want us to think about what kind of world do we want to create, and how can AI help us shape that, rather than AI is shaping the world and how do we keep up. We cannot live in fear. It is humans that are ultimately creating these AI models, and it is important for us to stand up and speak out about the ways in which we want AI to shape the world that we will continue to live in. It is important for us to consider, how can we be good ancestors for the future generations? Yeah. We are stepping into a revolution, and we can use this revolution to our advantage. We can reach the remotest of areas with education and healthcare now. We can predict and prepare for disasters. There's so much we can do that AI can help us with, but it's very important for us to consider, what kind of world do we want to live in? And so a digital rights perspective is very important when we approach this. And you have Amnesty International that's asked all of the big five digital landlords, has asked them, what are your rights-based approaches? How are you making sure that the power lies in the people and not in the technology? How are you protecting people? How are we making sure that certain ideologies and biases are not reinforced? So these are questions that I think all of us, it's very important for us to remember that we still have power and you will continue to have power. And asking questions and pushing back and not taking things for fact is part of what your power is. So in this case, the independence from technology is a choice.
But I would just, I mean, the reason I'm concerned is because I see changes in myself and in my own habits, in my own daily, you know, when I wake up and I look at my phone first thing in the morning, when I have a question in my mind, instead of thinking about it for a little while, you know, sitting in silence and thinking, you know, what could be the answer, or going and trying to research it, finding a book, trying to pull out an answer, which in the process of doing those things, you actually learn and evolve and grow. Now I reach for my phone, I open ChatGPT, I, you know, am too lazy even to type in sometimes, so I just talk at it. It gives me an answer back in a robotic voice. It goes through one ear, out the other, temporarily satisfies my basic, the first little layer of my curiosity, satisfies that, gives me my little dopamine hit, and then it's gone, you know. And if you ask me again the next day the same question, you know, if I look up, even what is a large language model, what is AI? I've asked AI that so many times, you know, and still I have difficulty explaining it because I look at the answer for 2 minutes, 1 minute, and then I'm gone. And so I just think that you say that it's a choice, and it is, and I think that is one of the most important things that I'm thinking about for my own life. You know, when I say, how do I want to live my life with all of this that's coming? And I think that making the conscious choice every day to continue to push ourselves intellectually, creatively, emotionally. You know, I have friends now who, when they're confronted with an issue in their relationships, you know, they're having a fight with their boyfriend or their girlfriend, they turn to ChatGPT when they need to send a difficult text, you know. And this is happening more and more, which is like exporting the emotional labor of being human. And if we don't consciously say, no, I'm not going to let ChatGPT write my breakup text, you know, then I'm going to sit here and think about why I'm taking this decision, why I feel this way. And that's just an example, but in so many different, you know, writing a condolence message, or these things that you have to actually think about what you feel and what you want to say. That is our humanity. And I think that we have to be very, very, very careful in being conscious in maintaining our control over that aspect of our life, because once we become too lazy to do those things, we lose our humanity, I think. And that's what's scary to me, is I see so many people losing it.
Yeah, absolutely. And zooming out from AI, it's technology in general. If we can agree that we're living in a capitalist economy where our attention is what the companies want. They want our attention. They want us to buy things. They want to distract us from the difficult things so that we purchase, so that we spend money, so that we don't raise our voices for the things that matter. In this capitalist economy, staying human is the most important thing. So when you're saying that, I was just doing this documentary in Tata, and to shut up their kids this child just had a phone in their hand, and I was there for 4 days, and for 4 days, this 2-year-old child just had a screen stuck to their brain,
Yeah.
watching it like this. And this is the next generation of Pakistanis, right? This is the next generation of people here. Adults are doing the same thing. If you're having a difficult moment, you step to your phone rather than confronting your feelings. Part of this is also how we regulate. Currently, there are no regulations. So when I mentioned Amnesty International just now, similarly at the United Nations, similarly in multiple other organizations have come forward and said, how do we regulate this? How do we make sure that this isn't taking over our agency as humans? It is addictive. That's the whole point. It's meant to be addictive. It's meant to distract you. It's meant to take your agency away so that you don't stand up for issues like Gaza, for issues like, I mean, I can make a very long list, but you know what I mean. There's too much power in the hands of the Big Five. There's too much power in the hands of these people, and we shouldn't take away that power that we have within ourselves. So this is a question not just for AI, but for the generally using technology, is how much power do you still have in your own life? I'll give an example, a very silly one, but I've moved to Lahore. I don't know the routes very well yet because I'm relying on Google Maps. So I have outsourced my digital, my personal compass to my phone. And that's dangerous because what if, you know, something were to happen and I wouldn't know how to get home? These are these little things in our lives that are helping us, they're assisting us, they're making things more efficient so that we can focus on other things, but it's also taking away our power. And so we have to find this like healthy balance of having like an assistant, right? That's what AI is, that's what technology is. It's assisting you. It's one of your assistants. You should still go to the libraries. You should still go talk to your grandparents. You should still go out to talk to like the guard on the street who knows everything, by the way. You know, those are the places that you gather your information in addition to AI. It's just one of the sources for yourself.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. Yeah.
I totally agree. I was thinking, considering we're both filmmakers, I'm leaving this aside now.
Yeah.
But considering we're both filmmakers and are navigating, trying to come up with new ideas, trying to come up with ways to convince people to give us money, trying to come up with, you know, doing our editing, I wonder if you could talk about how AI is already being like integrated into your workflow as a creative when you're coming up with stories, where it's helping you, where you think it's not helping you, where you think maybe the technology could go that could be really helpful, where maybe the dangers could also come from in terms of like giving away the core of our creativity. Yeah, what do you think about kind of integrating this technology into our work?
Yeah, there are like 15 questions you just asked, but I'll answer some of them. I have limited use of AI in my work. I only have one great example. A film I made 2 years ago. It's called Still Here. I collaborated with an organization called the Center for Victims of Torture, and they stood up for victims of state-sanctioned torture, which is a quiet group of people who deserve a lot more protection and justice and resources, and yet are often forgotten because the trauma is so monumental. And so I had to make a short film that would both empathize, humanize, highlight their experience in as much of a first-person perspective as I could without sensationalizing something that is so painful and dark. And so part of my process is research. Research as much as I could, and ultimately I found a story forming in my head about a character called Omar, who had been released from Guantanamo. The goal of this film was to advocate the closure of Guantanamo clearly unsuccessful, but I would hope that I'd like to push the needle forward a little bit. The way I used AI was ultimately after breaking open my rib cage and exposing my heart to the art that many victims of state-sanctioned torture had created. There were these themes that kept coming up in the paintings that they were making. Themes of desolation, of despair, of giving up, perhaps a glimmer of hope. But physically, what those themes often looked like was like a man on an island with no way to get to land, far away, on their own, by themselves. And so I had to go through a lot of really painful and graphic material, which was uncomfortable, but part of the process. I really needed to know to be able to represent someone appropriately. And then eventually what I did was there were a number of paintings that the inmates from Guantanamo had made, beautiful paintings, incredible artists, some of them were, which you obviously never think about. And so what I did with Midjourney was that I tried to create a single painting based on like 120 paintings made by the inmates.
Using
Midjourney. And so I worked with prompts. I had put in certain images and I iterated, and that way eventually I was able to create a single painting that we then used in the film to kind of symbolize. In a way, it was meant to aggregate their pain and represent that. But then I worked with an actual artist to recreate her version of what the AI painting had made with Midjourney. So it was like a very collaborative process. I found it very assistive. It also helped me. I didn't outsource my pain or outsource my humanity, but what it did help me do was aggregate something very raw and help me figure out, okay, if I want to make a painting that somebody from Guantanamo would have made, this is what it potentially could have looked like. Because I couldn't actually use any of the existing paintings, because how would I ever speak to those poor individuals who are, somewhere in the world? Yeah.
And that's amazing, because I feel like in so many ways it can do things that if you use it creatively in that way, it can add a whole other layers and aspects that we could just never, pull off. Or it's special because it is created by this kind of artificial intelligence. But
have you ever used AI in any of your work?
Well, so the last big project I did was finished last year, When the Floods Come, and it was basically a story that I shot in the year after the 2022 floods in Pakistan, where I wanted to travel the length of the Indus River and interview people on a black backdrop about their experiences with water. From their memories of water and the river as children, their experiences with the flooding that had happened in 2022 from the mountains to the riverbeds in Punjab to the kind of rainfall that happened in Sindh. And so over the course of that very long journey traversing the country, I built this archive of almost 50 interviews with people speaking about very, very, very personal aspects of their lives. And I was editing it in 2023, which was kind of right when ChatGPT was people were starting to talk about it. But I still didn't have an account. And so I had to go through every single one of those interviews, and there were 40, 45, 46 interviews. Each one was 30, 40 minutes long, in Urdu, in Saraiki, in Punjabi, in Sindhi. Some of the dialects I really was unable, so I had to bring other people. And it was a weeks-long process, literally transcribing almost 30 hours of raw interview material. And that experience in and of itself of listening to every word and translating it and transcribing it put me so deep into the world and the stories of these people, you know, because when you're filming it, you're already thinking about your next question sometimes. You're not fully present because you're thinking, is the camera on, is the light on? And so that experience of going through all of that interview footage was the core of my experience filming, making that film, you know? And so long story short, that was that pure analog, manual, intellectual, you know, sometimes monotonous labor. This spring, I went and shot something for the United Nations in the aftermath of the following year's floods about glaciers, and I did a lot of interviews there too also. And when I was editing this summer, I realized that the editing software's AI transcription model had become really good. And so I input all of the interviews into the thing, and it gave me almost a perfect transcript of all of those interviews. But what was crazy was when now I'm trying to finish that edit, and I have very little emotional connection to that material, you know?
Yeah.
And so I feel much less connected to the whole story. And
you have to go through the pain
you kind of have
to come
to
on
do
the
that,
other
yeah.
side to actually be able to connect.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm getting
So-
eyes that we're getting some Q&As. So
Do we have 5 more minutes, or we're gonna go to Q&As in 5 minutes?
yeah, go to the Q&A.
Oh, we're already in Q&A?
Yeah,
Oh
I think
shit,
so.
sorry.
We only got one question.
Okay, so the first question is, how do you believe AI is compromising creative abilities, Anya?
Okay, I'll go back into what you were just talking about with translation. How many times have you tried to translate something using an app and it comes out and it sounds absolutely hilarious?
Yeah.
And you're like, this is not what we are trying to say. When you translate, you really need that human intelligence of potentially what was going on in the situation around it. For example, yesterday or day before, I was conducting an interview, and the lady who was talking about her husband, but whenever she spoke about her husband, she's like, "Aapko pata, aapka bhai jo hai, ye wo." Aapka bhai meaning her husband. But if you would read that in a translation or a transcription, you would be like, I don't fully understand the context of this situation. So it's really important for us to, again, contextualize, and AI will not do that, nor will it understand nuances like this. So is AI compromising creative abilities? I think us choosing to rely solely on AI is us compromising our own humanity. I think that AI can assist our creative abilities, but I think that we should not live in fear. FOMO is something, fear of missing out is something that is something of the times. Capitalism has kind of created this urgency. Quick, faster, you're missing out. Do this, yesterday, you're already late. And I think the same hype is existing with AI. The same thing happened in the 90s with the internet. And there was this hyper economy that was built around it. And guess what happened? The boom went to bust. And the same thing is going to happen right now with the AI bubble. We're in the trillions. Many organizations are going to lose out. So we shouldn't be caught up in this fear economy. I really encourage you to step away and to remember that we are not a part of that. And they want you to be a part of that because that earns them money. So let's remember where our agency lies. And even if it's one wallet in one pocket.
Yeah.
That's what I think, yeah. Yeah. Go for it.
It says, how will future generations separate fake from real with AI blurring the lines between these two? Again, I think, I don't know. When I go on Instagram these days, I have no idea what is real and what is fake, to be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know what text is real. I don't know which text has been written by AI. I have a sense sometimes, but I think this is the core of kind of what we're talking about. And you know, if you can type in, you know, give me an emotional interview with an old woman crying about her flooded home, and then it coughs something up and it gives you there. I think at the core, in the same way that an AI can write you a poem, it doesn't have what makes even if the poem is better scripted and better written than a poem written by a human, I think that intrinsically the poem written by a human has more value. I think that, you know, the most beautiful painting made by AI is a million times more special than, you know, a painting made by an elephant with his trunk, you know, even if it's not as good. And I think that, so we have to keep, as storytellers, as creators, as humans, we need to continue to kind of go through all of the emotions, the feelings that we need to create things, to create beautiful things, to write songs, to make poems, to make films, to, you know, to cry and to laugh and all of these things. This is what story is about, and this is what humanity is about. And this is like, with all of these other jobs being taken over by AI, I think in some ways it's a blessing, because it allows us to focus more on the really foundational stuff of what we have been doing since the dawn of time, you know, telling those stories. That's what makes us human.
Absolutely. And I think that as we think about all of the things that make us human, one of the innate qualities that we have is to protect the ones that we love. And so we're at the precipice right now of a moment where we have to hold the agencies that are creating these artificial intelligences, that we hold them accountable and say, hey, how will we be able to distinguish? Will there be a stamp? Where will the separation lie?
Yeah.
We need to know that this is created by AI. We need to know there are so many people that are victims of deep fakes, victims of AI in multiple different ways, phishing scams, voiceovers, that kind of thing. There needs to be some protection. So we need to hold these organizations accountable. And so when organizations like the United Nations or Amnesty International asks them a question, we deserve an answer. And this is no longer a question of, oh, what if and maybe. This is a question of protecting ourselves and our future generations. So again, how can we be better ancestors? And similarly, whether we're talking about blurred photographs or being able to distinguish these things, we also need to step back a little bit and think about, where is AI sourced from? Yeah. What are the resources that AI is using? Where, you know, there's so much water that's being wasted. There's so much drinking water that's being wasted. Last year alone, artificial intelligence consumed 1.5% of the entire world's electricity. And we haven't even started. Yeah. So where is the accountability for that? Currently, there is none. But if all of us actually understand what we're contributing towards, then we have an opportunity here to step in and say, hey, we deserve more protection. We need protection from ourselves. We need protection from these organizations. So part of this is us actually not blindly following and downloading and giving away our data freely and accepting and saying, yes, you can have access to my photographs, or yes, you can have access to anything that I upload and you can use that for your training. Ultimately, we're giving up our agency with that. So this thing right here is your assistant. This thing is not your landlord. And remember the difference. This is really my biggest ask of everybody over here, is that we're falling in. I mean, as Pakistan, we are so lucky to have this 250 million people bursting with energy. There are lots of opportunities that we have right now. Technology can help us overcome so much of our poverty issues, so many of our literacy, healthcare, so many of these issues. But we have to stay in power because we know what our problems are. We need to know how to use technology to solve those problems, and not vice versa. And I think that that's really important for us to remember. Technology is not in control. We are in control.
Yeah.
Yeah. Get passionate. I think we have another question. I am concerned that AI could reduce storytelling to just efficient content. How do we preserve the depth, pain, joy, and truth that comes only from lived experiences?
I think, it's similar to what we've been talking about, but I think I think the foundation of it again is to continue to try to do those things in our individual lives. I don't know. I think that the efficient content isn't gonna. In some ways, I don't think it's gonna last that long. I don't know about everybody in this room, but I don't connect to that content at all. I connect to things that are much more simple and more human. And so, in terms of kind of preserving depth and pain and joy and truth, well, first of all, I think that we need to continue to have those experiences, to get off our phones, to get out of our comfort zones, to get out of our little bubbles. In Pakistan, in a certain strata, it's very easy also to kind of stay within our bubbles of privilege and in our AC rooms and cars, and I think that also kind of disconnects us from the realities of the vast majority of Pakistan that is not sitting in this room and not in these spaces. So I think that going out and confronting the real world is one of the most important things that we can do as we go forward, to remember what the vast majority of people are going through. And through that, I think that kind of expands our heart, our humanity, and that allows us to, it gives us inspiration to create new things, to tell new stories, to tell real stories, to not accept and not be interested in that very shallow first layer of content that we're constantly swiping through. So that's what I would say, is to go out and, as uncomfortable as it may be, to go out and really try to force yourself to have deep, meaningful interactions with real people, with each other. Sit and have longer conversations, ask each other harder questions, be vulnerable with one another. I think that that's the foundation of humanity that creates all of the greatest love stories and poems and films and all of that. And so yeah, that's what I would say. Is that it?
We're just, I think we're being told to wrap up.
We're wrapping up.
Just a little piece of my heart is try to digital detox sometimes, It's very tempting to get that little dopamine hit from your phone, but I would say when you're with your friends or you're with your family, put your phone away. Try to not have it around yourself. As beneficial as it is, it's your assistant after all. So try to spend time with yourself, with your emotions, with your thoughts, and think about what you want to do with your life and how you really want to spend it. We have the power here, and it was really an honor to speak to all of you. I really want to thank SOT Events for inviting us. You guys have done an amazing job. I wish I was in all of the rooms at the same time. So thank you to all of you, and thank you to Nyal for this great conversation.
As I was driving to Lahore and thinking about what we were going to talk about here, I was kind of reflecting on this thing, on AI. What is it? Where does it come from? How does it know all of these things? How does it understand us? And what I realized, as I was saying in the beginning, was that it has been trained on the cumulative knowledge base of humanity that it has access to, and that is the written stories, the oral testimonies, all of these things that storytellers, people who have wanted to express themselves, have put out into the world. That is what these AI models are trained on. And as we go forward, as we start navigating this incredibly new world, I mean, the years ahead, there have never been any like it. And our experiences as humans are, no other humans will have ever had the experiences that we're about to have. And as storytellers, as humans, as if you write in your journal, I think it is so important for us to continue to try to with our own brains, our own words, record what is happening in this world, so that because if we stop now, then the circle closes, you know, and humans stop creating, they stop telling stories, you know, the AI then fills that gap. And I think that as we move through this space, it's just so important for us to continue to create, to continue to think, continue to explore and try to understand what this miracle of life is. And that's what I intend to do, and I hope many of you in this room will do the same. So thank you.